Bodybuilding has a very bad reputation. The common thinking is that you cannot build that kind of a body and get up on stage unless you are on steroids. But how far is that really true? Recently, Fittr has collaborated with ICN, which is I Compete Natural, and we have been organizing an annual natural physique contest which showcases some of the best physiques around the world. And guess what? All of them are 100% natural. So if you want to look shredded, if you ever want to get up on stage and show people what you're made of, building a natural physique just might be your thing. In this week's episode, I'll be talking with JC about his own bodybuilding journey, and we'll be busting a lot of myths about bodybuilding. Let's get started. JC, a lot of people, I know this for a fact because I've known you and I've known the community for so long. You've been accused of taking steroids. You've been accused of being an unnatural, juiced up bodybuilder. I know you're not. But how does it make you feel when people ask you these questions and make accusations, knowing the fact that you are a natural physique athlete and people look at you and make these accusations?
I think it happens to everybody, not just people who are doing physical well. But I think anybody, if you take you take good actors who make these successful films, and then somehow the second film or the third film doesn't work, people start telling this guy was a one-trick pony. It didn't work. In a similar manner, a lot of people who get rich over a period of time. Now, if somebody has seen their journey, they would realize that they've worked hard. But somebody who's looking at their journey at a first instant will always have some amount of doubts in their mind, right? So I think initially when I started Fittr, it used to bother me a lot because I knew in my heart that, hey, I haven't done anything like this. And you'd be surprised to know that, even when I started, as early, like I was 14 years old, I had big muscles, like I had big biceps. You've seen pictures,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So even when I was 14 years old, I think my biceps would stand out. And not because they are big. A lot of people think my biceps are like 16 or 17 inches. They're 14 and a half. But they look big because they are round and they are short. So I have short limbs. And because you have short limbs, they kind of look more rounder.
Right.
Right.
You look bulky as a result.
You look bulky. Like even though right now I'm just 68 kgs. And if you, like in person, I feel like a really small guy. But if I take out my t-shirt off and then if it took my pictures, because I'm at a very low body fat percentage, it would look like I'm a huge guy. I'm not huge. Right? So I think a lot of these things come from ignorance. Also, I don't blame people because a lot of people have been taken for a ride for a very long period of time, especially by people who have done steroids. You're not just talking about normal folks. You're talking about the who's who of the world. And at one point of time, they were in complete denial that they were taking drugs. And then, like people just don't seem to trust anybody.
So what exactly is natural bodybuilding? I mean, a very layman term is somebody who does not do steroids is a natural bodybuilder. But what exactly is
illegal drugs. So steroids are one class of drugs, but then there are other drugs also. So what happens is that you have a certain range of testosterone in your body. You have certain range of growth hormone in your body. You have IGF-1, different kinds of hormones in your body. And as you get older, the levels decline.
it's natural.
Part of just getting older. And especially because, you're probably not keeping yourself active or you're not doing resistance training, not taking enough protein. And so what happens is also, even if the levels don't decline, your capacity to build muscles is generally very less. Like in the early years, like the earlier you start, you have more chances of gaining muscles early on. But as you age, your ability to put on muscle mass diminishes. Okay, so for example, if you're a new guy, maybe in a year's time, you'd be able to put up like between 2 to 5 kilograms of muscle mass in the first 1 or 2 years. After that, even to put up like 2 kilograms of muscle mass each year, it would be like very, very rare. difficult. Like somebody who's working extremely hard would be able to put up maybe 2 to 3 kgs of muscle mass a year. Becomes very difficult, right? Now, when you go on steroids, and steroids are basically a form of testosterone that is synthetically made in a lab. And when you take steroids, exogenous testosterone, it aids in muscle building. Okay, so you can put up a lot of muscle mass in a very shorter span of time. So what would have taken you an year's time, you'd probably build the same amount of muscle mass in maybe, like 8 to 12 weeks.
So essentially, if you are on the juice, as they call it, you will build muscle faster, but
Yes.
will you also build bigger muscles as compared to somebody who's natural?
No, I mean, if you are able to put up, let's say, 10 times more muscle mass, obviously you're going to get bigger. Because muscles, the bigger the muscles, the more substrate they can store. So you have more glycogen storage capacity because the muscles are getting bigger. And the more you train, the more bigger you get, the more you juice. And it's like a perpetual cycle.
But I mean, that's not been the history of bodybuilding. It's not that bodybuilders right from the earlier days, we are talking about Sando and all these other guys who were really into Eugene Sando, for instance. You look at Eugene Sando and compared to some of the guys today, he looks small. But when did this, whole anabolic steroid usage or IGF steroid usage start in bodybuilding? And now it's like just about everybody's on the juice. You can't be natural if you want to step up on stage.
That is not true. Actually, we have a very long history of having great physiques throughout our ancient history.
Yeah.
If you go to any of the European countries, you see how those ancient sculptures are carved like demigods and gods.
Right.
And if you compare those structures, in the older times, we had mystical figures like Adonis, Hercules.
Yeah.
And if you see their statues, they are built like proper bodybuilders. Back then, nobody knew steroids. So unless until those people look like that, how could you make statues like this?
Right.
Right. So it basically it basically hints at the fact that people did have muscular figures historically. And even if you come close to home in India, we had Lord Hanuman.
Right.
He was physically very strong and he had a perfect structure like a big bodybuilder, right? And he's known to lift heavier things. If you compare to non-mystical figures, then close home we have Vishnu, Sen, Ghosh.
Yes.
These were the guys who wrote the books on physical culture. If you follow this IG account, it's called Barbell Films, you'd see bodybuilders throughout the century and even before, like we're talking about 1890s, 1910, 1920s. See physiques, like amazing physiques. Today, even a lot of people cannot achieve those kind of physique, even while on juice. So it's not that people cannot build muscles without steroids or any sort of illegal drugs. It is perfectly possible, but there's difference. Like you cannot get big, and by big, you would be easily able to tell if somebody is doing some sort of fishy stuff.
How would you know?
Okay, so that comes with experience. Okay, the skin quality is different, and then look, skin quality is different.
Can you look at a person and look who's really big and say, "Arey, he's that big because he's doing steroids"?
I personally feel I personally feel I'm in position to kind of make that assessment. I feel like I can. But apart from that, you also have so many drug agencies. Just get a blood test done. You find out something here and there, you'd be able to tell.
What's really alarming is that, okay, bodybuilders have been using anabolic steroids and all that. Kids these days, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, because they're chasing this kind of physique, I go to a gym and I find these syringes on a regular basis, lying around. I see them in the locker room and they've had to put up signs saying that we do not.
We had one in Recomp, I remember.
Yeah. So I think you need to tell kids and people who are, who want to build a physique, why it's a bad idea to do this. Because I think nobody is telling them, they just see the results. They don't realize that there are consequences.
So, funny story. Back in the days when I was competing for Fit Factor, and of course I did not win, but my physique was impressive. And a lot of people came backstage and they were asking me, JC, what are you taking? Because you have very different kind of body. Like your body is not big, you have very lean physique, but it's very aesthetically pleasing.
Very well developed.
Well developed, and it was more aesthetically pleasing. Like I had the right symmetry, right proportions and everything. So I was like, no, I'm not taking any drugs. And most of the people just thought that I was like bluffing.
Yeah.
And that like irritated me like to an extent where I said, you know what, I'm going to train some athletes. And so I did train athletes. And I must have trained 14, 15 athletes back then. And they were completely natural, right? So I trained those athletes. And then when I started training more and more people, people started realizing, okay, look, maybe there's some truth to it. But it was, even then, people were not ready to believe that this is naturally possible.
Right.
Then what we did, we started training regular folks. And then just, people are losing 20, 30 kgs, 50 kgs. We even have stories of people losing 100 kgs.
Yes.
Right? And you would expect that everybody is on drugs. But then you have stories of people who are like 70-year-old, 80-year-old, they're getting results. So then people started taking seriously, hey, maybe this guy is onto something. And there's really a science to it all. Right? So then, you know how Fittr has evolved over a period of time. So I think what people don't realize that there is definitely a science to building muscles and getting results. And it's as simple as this. Look, muscles are an outcome of an input. What is this input? You're basically going to the gym and lifting things which are probably beyond your capability. And in an effort to survive, because this is how your cells develop, right? So that's like a stress for your body. And so body adapts to that stress by responding. How does it respond? By making your muscles stronger, making your muscle sizes bigger. Now that could be two things. One is here, of course, the filament, which basically does the pushing and pulling. So you have actin, myosin filaments, which basically, it basically expands and then gets back to its position. So those filaments get strong, and on top of that, the substrate, the sarcoplasm, that also kind of gets bigger and bigger. Right? So basically you combine, you're talking about myofibrillar and sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. That's basically body's usual response to resistance training.
Right.
Now, whether you're taking drugs or not, you are going to develop muscles. When we take in drugs, the process just happens a lot more sooner. That's the
lot more
difference.
smoother, faster. You get better results.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think it also comes at a cost. And I think people need to be told what that cost is. Because kids, if you're 19 or 20, you look at this Instagram influencer, you want to look like him, you will do whatever it takes to do it. And unfortunately, people are doing that. So can you maybe spell out the consequences of using drugs for bodybuilding?
Yes. So bodybuilding, by the way, is not a very healthy sport. And I don't even follow bodybuilding. I've told this, I think, numerous times that I'm not a fan of bodybuilding. It's not a very healthy sport. I don't even think of it as a sport because there's nothing sporty about. The problem with taking exogenous testosterone or growth hormones is that even without exercising, they can build your muscles. There was this research, I don't recall the name, but they did exogenous testosterone to folks who were not doing exercise, and they were able to develop muscle mass.
Man, that's crazy.
Yes. And so what happens is, and because your heart is also a muscle, your organs also are muscles, So what happens is that when you are developing your muscles, some of these organs also get enlarged over a period of time. And because of this, your organs get damaged. Other thing is that when you put up a lot of muscle mass, it's like putting up weight.
Yeah.
Like your fat tissue, muscle is also a tissue. So whether you are an overweight, obese individual, or whether you are somebody who's taken a lot of drugs and you have a lot of muscle mass, every tissue needs some amount of upkeep, which means that your heart is going to deliver nutrition to those active tissues, nutrition and oxygen, right? So if you suddenly develop a lot of muscle mass, now your heart is not adapted to that, equipped to handle that kind of sudden jump in the volume. Okay, so now your heart is working harder. And so most of these drug bodybuilders, the best way to check if they are on some sort of drugs is to check their resting heart rate. And you'd figure out that their resting heart rate is completely whack. Okay? And because of this, the heart, which is supposed to get older in 50 years or 60 years, it starts getting older at an early age. And so cardiac arrest in bodybuilders is very common.
Yeah.
Any sort of cardiac issues, kidney issues, liver issues, these are very common in bodybuilders drugged bodybuilders.
Taking exogenous testosterone, what does it do to your body's natural testosterone
Apart from this also, because see, anytime what happens, your body maintains a certain range of testosterone. And for a healthy individual, it could be 300 to 1000 ng per deciliter. And then there's the free testosterone, right? Which is the actual bioavailable testosterone in the body.
Yeah.
So you have, when you take exogenous testosterone, now because you are taking exogenous testosterone, body works on a feedback mechanism. Like same thing happens with cholesterol. If you take it from food, the body shuts down or reduces the production of internal cholesterol because you're taking too much from food, and vice versa. If you take exogenous testosterone or exogenous growth hormone, the body is going to sense, hey, this guy is anyways taking exogenous testosterone, exogenous growth hormone. I don't need to produce it.
Right.
So it will then send a signal to your hypothalamus, and then it will send signal eventually to your HPT axis, and then it will shut down your testosterone production.
And what happens when you go off these exogenous? Does your body kickstart it again, or is that permanently damaged?
That is, I think, tricky part. So again, there's something called as the post-cycle therapy, where they take these drugs which are originally intended for breast cancer.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Okay.
So those drugs, then these guys take, and then that kind of like fixes the cycle. Fixes the damage, and it gets better. Some people also develop gynecomastia, right? So they take this drug, and it can also fix some of those things, right? So not 100% aware, but like from whatever I've read, okay. And so they do this for a 3-month cycle. On cycle, and then 3-month off cycle. So they will go on some sort of form of testosterone, right? And there's different kinds of testosterone with different kinds of half-lives and like different testosterones.
Yeah.
And then like Deca, and then Tren, and some propanate, and all these kind of different names depending on the half-life and everything. And then they will go off these drugs for 3 months, in which they will do the PCT, which is the post-cycle therapy, and then this cycle keeps on going on. The problem with this is that sometimes it's a hit and a miss, which means that anytime you are taking any sort of exogenous testosterone, any kind of exogenous drug, it is going to mess with your internal system,
right?
Because at the end of the day, it's something which is not your body's natural response. Your body is not naturally equipped to handle it.
Correct.
So while your body is suddenly now, recovering and creating more muscle tissues, it is going to definitely have some sort of repercussions in your body. And that's why testosterones are often, like illegal. You cannot procure testosterone injection steroids legally. And so, but, they are so viral. And even the big pharma, a lot of companies, even though, they know that testosterone and all these drugs are illegal, they peddle it out through black market. And so it's very easy to obtain drugs.
So clearly the natural route is the best route to take, if you, not just for your physical appearance, but for your long-term health also.
Another thing that messes up when you are a enhanced bodybuilder is that your lipid profile also goes for a toss.
How so?
Your cholesterol levels will go back, and that also whacks your liver. So your liver is going to get hurt really bad if you keep taking testosterone. Keep following any kind of cycles. I've come across, in fact, this morning, I think somebody in my broadcast channel asked me, after years of testosterone, steroid abuse, sorry, I keep changing the words, if after years of abusing my body through steroids, is there like a way for me to come out of it safely? And I just check with a doctor, because it's a slippery slope. If you are young enough, your body can recover from most of the shit. But if you are older, it's very difficult for your body to recover from these kind of abuses. So, and the longer time you spend, we have to understand one thing. Most of the guys who are taking drugs, they haven't fully lived their age yet.
Yeah.
You're getting my point? Even if you started taking drugs back in the 90s, which is probably when it made to India, you're still like 35, 40. So there's still a whole lot of age ahead of you.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen the repercussions of these drugs in
you don't know the really long-term effects.
We haven't seen longitudinal setting. And from what I believe is that at least in some people, those drugs or the abuse would have started showing some effects. By the time they turn 50 and 60, they'll really regret it.
Yep.
But people are not hearing their story because that time is yet to come. People are hearing stories from who? People who are like 35-year-old, 40-year-old, like, yeah, it's okay. We do have certain incidents where people have died of cardiovascular incidents, and that's about it.
So clearly you have obviously, stayed far away from these things. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your own fitness journey? Not the fitness journey, let's say post Fittr, but when you were, let's say you wanted to get into Fit Factor or you wanted to get into Muscle Mania, get up on stage. When did that preparation start? What was your regime? What was your goal when you were doing all these things? And how did you stay motivated on this journey?
Right. So I was very ignorant to the point that I never knew that steroids existed. So even when I was 14 years old and I used to go in the local gym, we had fit people. The people were like, and again, those are farmers and laborers and they had good muscles.
Yeah.
I had no reason to believe that anybody was doing anything. And I would ask them, what were you eating? They said boiled chicken, boiled eggs, See, so those guys were following the same basic principles, boiled meat, boiled vegetables, boiled eggs, and everything clean. So I also hopped onto the same habit. And just by doing that, I was already getting results. So before I came to Mumbai, that was actually the first time I heard the name steroid. And this was back in maybe 2011. So we had this gym in Koparkharne called Your Gym. I don't know if it exists anymore. And that's the first time I saw the trainers actually, poking a needle up their ass. Like I didn't see, but I went inside and there was something happening.
That would have been very
I was like, what the
traumatic
fuck?
if you actually saw somebody like.
No. So that's what I'm saying. So I went in and there was this guy. He's like his pants down, and there was other guy. I was like,
You're like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah. So that was like when it was the first time, and then they were like, there's just some signaling as if they thought I understood what they were doing because they thought I was love. So that's when I started asking some people, and there was one very good friend of mine. I don't want to take his name, and then he enlightened me about this whole thing. This is how it works. The guy had good muscles, and he guided me. And
Were you not ever tempted to start?
Yeah, even back then, I believe steroids are expensive.
But what if, so money was maybe one thing that held you back.
I think back then, if you were to take, let's say, steroids, it would cost you like 1.5 lakh rupee a month.
But maybe a part of you did think, what if, this seems like a good way to get that body I want.
Even if I wanted to, I'm just glad I didn't have that money. Because I know that would have been like a very big, step in where I am today. I'm so glad that I didn't go for it. But I know for a fact that a lot of Bollywood stars were spending that kind of money. I also remember that it happens in bodybuilding competitions in India. I know that for a fact because I know I have encountered a 19-year-old at one of my gyms. 19-year-old guy. And he was just popping pills. It's called D-ball. Okay, and those are like oral form of testosterone, and those are the worst because they give you man boobs. And he had the most weird-looking chest I'd ever seen. Like he's literally like stick. His legs are stick, his hands are stick, his everything is stick, but his chest are like literally balloon. So I'm not sure it was just from eating that D-ball thing or he was also injecting some synthol or something. This is the oil.
Yeah.
But it was weird. I think these kind of encounters have happened with me from time to time, and I think they also kind of prevented me from doing anything because I really love my body.
Yeah.
Like my body is aesthetic, and I always wanted to look in a certain manner. So growing up, Steve Reeves, Hrithik Roshan, that's the kind of body I wanted. I never wanted to look like an inflated balloon, and it was all about like aesthetic body,
So coming back to ICN, what is it that attracted you to these guys? Why did you want to collaborate with ICN? And what exactly are you trying to achieve with this collaboration with ICN?
Nothing really. Jay is a good friend. Jay Narayan Acharya is a good friend. He is, I know him from Muscle Mania days. So he also competed in Muscle Mania.
Okay.
And so we were just good friends, and he had a good physique, like very aesthetic, very well spoken, comes from a great family. And we have spoken a couple of times. And then he told me, I think 2018, that JC, I want to bring natural bodybuilding to India. It's doing pretty well around the world. I said, sure, we do this event every year. Why don't you guys host I see at Connect. And so that was about it. So when we started doing that, and I think in the first Connect itself, they got like 400 plus participants. And last year it was around 1200 plus participants.
Wow.
It was massive. And so the event is growing, and I think it's also opening up doors. Just now, yesterday, I got a mail from this gentleman who's like 65 years old. Siva, his name is. And he was like, JC, thank you. At 65, I'm competing in natural bodybuilding.
Wow.
All because of you and your team. And, I'm looking better than a lot of young guys also.
Will they be able to compete in a natural physique contest in December?
They can compete in a year's time. Winning is going to be different. So I'm saying,
Of course.
look, I'm saying for the first 2 to 3 years, you should not think about any kind of outcome. Don't think about outcome. Just go in, put in the work. Give it at least 5 years.
5, okay.
5 years is nothing, man. If you start at 18, by 22, you're competing. It's
Right.
good enough. If you want to compete at 20, maybe start at bloody 15. See, I'm saying it takes time. Even if you want to go and compete in Olympics, people have 15 to 20 years of
course.
training
Yes.
minimum.
Yes.
That's the amount of training that they need to be able to compete in Olympics. You want to become a bodybuilder in 6 months, not going to happen. You want to do it naturally, 5 years, anybody should do it. I'm sure you can do it early. You can do it in 2 years, 3 years. Look at Nosai, his progress amazing.
Yeah.
But he is nowhere close to being a bodybuilder.
Correct. Yeah.
And any progress that he has shown in the last 3 months, if he is able to sustain the same kind of efforts, it will still take him at least 2 years to get to like a level. And then on top of that, he needs to achieve the right kind of conditioning, then posing, knowing how to flex and then symmetry itself. Because bodybuilding competitions are not judged on how shredded you are. They're also judged on other parameters like your conditioning, your skin quality, your posing skills, your poise, composure, all those things matter, right? So it's like it's not a sport per se. It's more like an art.
But do you recommend, let's say, if somebody starts and, periodically, let's say 2 years down the road, they just compete in a contest just to get a flavor of it, just to see where they stand?
Yeah, I really don't see how you can make a career out of just winning bodybuilding competitions. It gives you good limelight on social media. You can fame it for a small period of time that can kickstart or aid in your other
But
careers.
getting a pro card is something that a lot of people aspire to.
Yeah, like I said, don't think of it, just think of it as fun. But don't think that you can make a career into this. And I want everybody to go and try it. It's a good experience getting on stage, seeing the potential of your body naturally. And it's fun. But beyond that, don't take bodybuilding as a career, especially in India. There's no career in bodybuilding. You can use that as a launch pad. You can use your posing days, pictures, videos as a launch pad to probably become a coach or launch your services or something. But bodybuilding itself is not a career. You don't get paid. You probably get a certificate, shield, some cash prize. You invest more than that into preparation itself.
Yeah.
So don't waste your time thinking that you'll make a career out of your bodybuilding.
But like you said, if you want to do it for the fun of it, to see what your body is capable
that you
of,
should do.
then that's a great
At least once in a lifetime, you should do that.
natural ho, yeah, enhanced ho. There is obviously, I think now people will get a better perspective of what they want to do. Like you said, it's about longevity. It's about respecting your body. And if you want to do it, go ahead, do it for the fun of it, do it for the experience. But your core focus needs to be your health and longevity. JC, once again, thank you so much for this very honest and enlightening conversation.
Thank you.
And I hope it's really helped a lot of people on their journey.
I sure hope that.
Great. Thanks. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Fittr podcast. And don't forget, you can ask your questions directly to JC. All you have to do is join his broadcast channel on Instagram. The handle is Fittr with JC. Ask away your questions. No question is too stupid. He does not judge, and trust me, he answers every question himself. If you are watching this video on YouTube, ask your questions in the comment section below. We'll make sure the questions reach JC. And keep learning, keep getting fit, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.